Hey, my name is Max. For the last 15 years, I've been doing something that most people think is unusual. Let's begin. I have been carrying this story for 15 years. A box of printed photographs, field notes and cheap notebooks, a case file with a name and a date. December 2010, Chicago. I'm ready to tell it now. Chicago that winter was brutal. The kind of cold that makes the city feel hostile, even to people with homes. For the people without homes, and there were thousands of them, it was something else entirely. My team had been working the north side for 3 weeks, 6 of us. Not a government program, not a charity. 6 people with a methodology and a belief that the way most organizations approach homelessness is fundamentally wrong. Most organizations approach from the outside. They hand things out. And that matters. Food matters. Warmth matters. But it does not reach the part of the problem that actually needs reaching. The psychological architecture of a person who has been on the street for years is completely different from someone who lost their home last week. You cannot fix that rewiring with a sandwich. Our approach was different. We watched first. We documented. We built a picture of a person before we ever introduced ourselves. Because if you approach without understanding, you make things worse. We spent 3 weeks watching Sarah before we said a single word to her. I first saw her on a Tuesday morning on Michigan Avenue. She was standing completely still in the middle of the morning crowd, people flowing around her in both directions like water around a stone. And once you actually looked, you could not look away. The hair. I have worked hundreds of cases over 15 years, and I have never seen anything like it. Vivid red, natural, not dyed, matted into enormous, thick ropes reaching almost to her knees, completely covering her face. You could not see her eyes. She was inside that hair like it was a room she had built for herself, a room that kept the world out. I took a photograph from the van window. That photograph is on my table right now. Over the following 3 weeks, we documented her daily. Where she slept, where she ate, where she walked. And she walked miles every day. No destination, just movement. She had been on the streets for 6 years. She had worked in design, lost her job when the company folded, spent her savings, lost her apartment. 6 years. Here's what most people do not understand. There is a point, different for every person, but always a point, where the brain stops being able to process help as help, where an offered hand feels like a threat. Psychologists call it learned helplessness. The brain has received the same message thousands of times. What you do does not matter, nothing changes, and it stops trying. This is not weakness. This is the brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, learning from experience. The tragedy is that the lesson it learned was wrong. Sarah had been past that point long before we found her. We made contact on a Thursday morning. Cold. Gray. I crouched down to her level in that doorway, said, "Hey, I see you. I am not here to move you on. I just want to sit here for a minute." She did not respond, so I sat down. Properly sat, on the cold pavement in my coat, and I held the coffee out toward the mass of vivid red hair, and I waited. 11 minutes. At 11 minutes, a hand came out from inside the hair, blackened, cracked at every knuckle, and it took the coffee cup very carefully, the careful movement of someone who has learned that things can be taken back. We sat in that doorway for 40 minutes. I said maybe 30 words. She said 4. "How far is it?" 10 minutes. "I have a car." "Okay." She looked out the window the entire drive. I did not try to talk. Chicago moved past. I watched her in the mirror, the vivid red hair filling the back seat, the tension in her shoulders, very slowly, beginning to ease. The rehabilitation center was not luxury. It was clean, warm, and staffed by people trained in exactly this kind of work. Nobody rushed, nobody performed enthusiasm, nobody treated her as a case study. The first thing that happened was the simplest. A room with a door that locked, a white robe, a hot shower. She stood under that shower for 45 minutes. When she came out, the hair was still matted, still enormous, still covering her face. But something in her posture had shifted. 2 or 3 degrees. The shoulders. Just the shoulders. That is always where it starts. The spa program lasted 2 weeks. I want to be clear about what that actually was, because it was not cosmetic. It was neurological. Research from the Touch Research Institute at the University of Miami has documented for decades that consistent therapeutic touch produces measurable reductions in cortisol, the stress hormone, and increases in oxytocin, the hormone associated with trust and safety. Sarah's nervous system had categorized physical contact as a threat. Every spa session was slowly recalibrating that, 1 session at a time. The first hair wash took 4 therapists and 3 hours. The water that ran off her hair in the first pass was near black. 6 shampoo cycles before the water ran clear. And as the grime released and the vivid copper-red color emerged, strand by strand, something was happening that was not just physical. The hair had been a shield. As it was cleaned and returned to its natural state, that shield did not disappear. It transformed. It became something she chose rather than something she was hiding behind. There is a difference. It matters enormously. The gym program began in week 3. She walked into the gym and stopped in the doorway. Our trainer Diane stood by the treadmill, not rushing over, not smiling too hard, just available. Sarah stood in the doorway for 4 minutes before she moved. When she finally started the treadmill, slowest setting, barely faster than standing, I watched from the other side of the glass and thought about the brain. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, for believing in a future, was receiving new information for the first time in years. You moved. Something happened. The action produced a result. For a brain that has spent years learning that actions produce nothing, this is enormous. She walked 11 minutes that first session, got off, stood with her hand on the rail and breathed. Diane handed her a water bottle. She took it. By day 12, she was running. The nutritional program was built around one principle. The brain is an organ. Like every organ, it requires specific inputs to function. When those inputs are wrong or absent, it malfunctions. We do not tell someone with a failing heart to want recovery more. We give the organ what it needs. The brain is no different. Within 3 weeks, the shift in Sarah was visible to everyone. Not dramatic, just clearer, more present. She started asking questions, small ones at first. What time does the gym open? What is in this? Questions require believing that answers matter, that tomorrow exists. That is everything. 90 days after she got into the car on Erie Street, Sarah stood in front of a mirror in the Rehabilitation Center and looked at herself for a long time. The vivid copper-red hair professionally styled, the face that had been hidden for 6 years fully visible. She did not cry, did not smile, just looked. One of my team asked her afterward what she was thinking. She said, "I was trying to remember if I recognized myself. I think I do." She found work within 3 weeks of leaving the program. Graphic design, the work she had always done before everything collapsed. Part-time at first, then full-time. She is still working there. I spoke to her 6 months ago. She said, "Tell the whole thing, not just the pretty part at the end." So that is what I have tried to do. The difference between Sarah's story and the story of every person still out there on those streets tonight is not intelligence, not character, not deserving. The difference is whether someone stopped. That is the entire difference. You do not need a methodology to do that. You do not need training or a van or a team. You need to be willing to see someone who has learned to make themselves invisible.